Leaders speak differently than most people. It's not just about what they say, but how they say it. The words they choose, the pace, the confidence behind their voice, and even the way they structure their sentences all contribute to the way they inspire, motivate, and influence. Today, we're going to explore how leaders communicate and why it sets them apart. First, let's talk about clarity. Leaders are clear in their communication. They know that vague words create confusion and hesitation. When a leader speaks, their ideas are easy to understand, concise, and purposeful. They avoid unnecessary jargon and filler words. Every word has a function. You'll notice that when a leader speaks, there is no room for ambiguity. People know exactly what is expected, and they understand the vision being shared. This clarity is not accidental. It comes from thinking carefully about the message before speaking and structuring thoughts in a way that is digestible. Leaders often rehearse internally, mapping out how to present their ideas so that they resonate. Confidence is another hallmark of a leader's speech. You can feel it when someone talks with authority, even without knowing their background. They don't apologize unnecessarily or hedge their statements with, "I think," or "maybe." Their confidence is quiet but firm. It comes from preparation, experience, and belief in their vision. But it's important to note that true confidence is not arrogance. Leaders speak with assurance because they have considered their words. They understand the impact of what they say, and they respect the intelligence of their audience. Confidence in speech makes people listen, follow, and trust. Leaders also use language that inspires action. It's one thing to give instructions. It's another to motivate someone to act with energy and purpose. Leaders understand the power of verbs, the importance of rhythm in sentences, and the effect of storytelling. They don't just tell people what to do. They explain why it matters. They paint pictures of possibilities, outcomes, and success. When they communicate, they evoke emotion and purpose. People feel compelled to act, not because they are told, but because they understand the vision and feel part of something bigger. The ability to listen is just as critical as speaking. Leaders speak differently because they understand the power of dialogue. They don't dominate conversations, but instead, they engage. They ask questions that encourage reflection and insight. They use pauses effectively, allowing space for others to think and respond. The best leaders are not just speakers. They are listeners first. Listening shapes the way they communicate because it allows them to address real concerns, answer unspoken questions, and guide conversations toward productive outcomes. Another difference in the way leaders talk is their use of storytelling. Facts and figures are important, but humans respond to stories. Leaders know this instinctively. They share stories that illustrate principles, convey lessons, or reveal experiences. A well-told story makes the message memorable. It sticks with people long after the meeting ends. Stories also humanize leaders, making them relatable while reinforcing authority. A leader who can blend facts with narratives creates a compelling communication style that engages minds and hearts. Leaders are deliberate with their tone and pace. They understand that how something is said often matters more than what is said. A calm, measured tone communicates control and thoughtfulness, while an enthusiastic tone energizes and motivates. Leaders adjust their cadence, pitch, and emphasis to highlight key points. They use silence strategically, not out of uncertainty, but to let important ideas sink in. The pauses, the inflections, and the rhythm all serve the purpose of enhancing the impact of their words. Emotional intelligence is evident in leader communication. Leaders speak with empathy. They understand the human element behind every interaction. They acknowledge feelings, validate experiences, and express genuine care. When challenges arise, they communicate with balance, honest about difficulties, but also focus on solutions and possibilities. This empathy builds trust and loyalty. People are more likely to follow a leader who speaks in a way that respects their emotions, experiences, and perspectives. Leaders also simplify complexity. They deal with complicated ideas, processes, or strategies, but they have a knack for breaking them down into understandable concepts. They use analogies, metaphors, and examples that connect with their audience's experience. This ability to translate complexity into clarity is not just a communication skill. It's a leadership skill. People feel informed, capable, and confident when leaders explain complex topics in accessible ways. Another critical aspect is consistency. Leaders communicate in a consistent manner. Their messages, tone, and priorities align with their actions. This consistency builds credibility. If a leader speaks with vision, values, and purpose, people know what to expect. Inconsistent speech creates confusion and erodes trust. Leaders understand that communication is not just about words in the moment. It is about reinforcing a reputation, culture, and set of values over time. Leaders also ask powerful questions. They know that the right question can open minds, spark creativity, and guide teams toward solutions. Instead of giving all the answers, leaders provoke thought. They challenge assumptions gently but firmly. Their questions are purposeful, not random. This approach encourages others to engage actively and take ownership of their contributions. Leaders create dialogue, not monologue, because they know that communication is most effective when it is a two-way street. Another difference is that leaders embrace brevity without sacrificing depth. They know that long-winded speeches can lose attention and dilute the impact of their message. Yet, being brief does not mean superficial. Leaders convey depth in fewer words by choosing precisely the right words and structuring their message with care. This is why when a leader speaks, every sentence seems meaningful, purposeful, and memorable. Leaders also adapt their communication to their audience. They understand that what resonates with one group may not work with another. They tailor language, examples, and delivery to suit the listeners. This adaptability shows respect for the audience and increases the effectiveness of the message. Leaders read the room, adjust their style, and ensure that their ideas are accessible and compelling to those listening. Leaders are persuasive without being manipulative. They influence through logic, clarity, empathy, and vision rather than coercion or pressure. They inspire trust, so people want to follow them willingly. Their persuasion is rooted in credibility and authenticity. When leaders speak with integrity, their influence is amplified because people recognize that the message is genuine and worth following. Another hallmark is the use of repetition and reinforcement. Leaders know that repetition is not redundancy, it is reinforcement. They restate key points, summarize crucial ideas, and remind people of vision and priorities. This repetition ensures clarity, retention, and alignment. People leave a conversation with a leader knowing what matters most and remembering the central message. Leaders embrace storytelling, not just for motivation, but for teaching. They use examples from their experience, historical events, or case studies to illustrate lessons. They frame challenges as opportunities and setbacks as learning moments. This method of teaching through narrative makes ideas memorable, actionable, and relatable. People internalize these lessons because they are connected to real experiences, not just abstract principles. Leaders communicate with credibility. They back their words with evidence, experience, and knowledge. They don't make empty promises. They are accountable for what they say, and they follow through. Credibility in communication earns trust, fosters engagement, and encourages action. When a leader speaks, people listen because they know the message is grounded in truth and expertise. Leaders also speak with vision. They articulate not just what needs to be done, but why it matters and where it leads. They create a sense of purpose that aligns with both individual and organizational goals. Their vision provides direction and clarity, and it inspires people to go beyond what is comfortable or familiar. When leaders communicate vision effectively, people feel motivated to contribute to something greater than themselves. Leaders handle difficult conversations with skill. They do not shy away from tough topics, but they approach them with tact, respect, and clarity. They address issues directly without creating defensiveness. They focus on solutions and learning rather than blame. This approach builds a culture of honesty, accountability, and growth. People respect leaders who can speak hard truths in a way that is fair, empathetic, and actionable. Leaders are mindful of nonverbal communication. What they say is amplified or diminished by body language, facial expressions, and gestures. Leaders are aware of this and use it intentionally. Open posture, eye contact, and purposeful gestures support their words. Nonverbal cues reinforce confidence, clarity, and empathy. Leadership communication is a complete package of words, tone, and body language working together to inspire and guide. Leaders are present in their communication. They give their full attention, avoid distractions, and engage fully in the moment. This presence communicates respect, focus, and sincerity. People feel valued and heard when a leader is fully present. Presence also enhances the impact of the message, making it more compelling and memorable. Finally, leaders communicate with purpose. Every word, sentence, and story has intention behind it. Leaders understand that communication is not random. It is strategic. It shapes culture, motivates teams, conveys values, and drives results. Leaders speak to influence, inspire, and create impact. They communicate to build trust, align people, and move toward a shared vision. In summary, leaders talk differently because they combine clarity, confidence, empathy, storytelling, strategic thinking, and presence in every conversation. Their words are purposeful. Their tone is deliberate, and their messages resonate because they are rooted in authenticity, preparation, and vision. By observing, learning, and practicing these principles, anyone can elevate their communication, influence, and leadership presence. When you start thinking like a leader, speak like a leader, and communicate with intention, people will listen. Your word will carry weight, inspire action, and leave a lasting impact. Leadership is not just about position or title. It's about the way you communicate and the way your words move people toward growth, excellence, and purpose. Leaders don't just speak to be heard. They speak to be understood. They know that communication is not about talking for the sake of talking. It's about connecting, influencing, and shaping outcomes. Every interaction is an opportunity to inspire, guide, or clarify. Leaders approach each conversation with intention. They ask themselves, what do I want the listener to feel, understand, or do? This mindset transforms ordinary speech into powerful communication. Leaders also recognize the power of framing. How you frame an idea affects how it is received. For instance, instead of saying, we have a problem, a leader might say, we have an opportunity to improve. Same situation, entirely different perception. Words shape reality. Leaders choose frames that motivate, encourage, and energize, rather than discourage or create fear. By framing their words strategically, leaders influence both mindset and action. They also practice strategic silence. Silence is one of the most underrated tools in communication. Leaders know when to pause, when to let a thought sink in, and when to allow others to speak. Silence shows confidence. It gives weight to the message. It allows the audience to reflect and internalize the points being made. Many leaders are masters of this balance. They speak decisively, then pause deliberately, giving space for engagement. Leaders are masters of nuance. They understand that communication is not just black and white. They pay attention to tone, context, and subtle cues. They know that a slight shift in phrasing can change the meaning or impact of a message dramatically. This sensitivity allows them to navigate complex conversations with diplomacy and influence without losing clarity or authority. Leaders use metaphors and analogies to make abstract ideas tangible. They bridge the gap between vision and understanding. When explaining a complex concept, they find familiar images, stories, or comparisons to make it relatable. This not only enhances comprehension, but also makes the communication memorable. People don't just hear leaders' words. They visualize them, internalize them, and remember them long after the conversation ends. Leaders also appeal to values. They understand that people act not only out of logic, but also out of what they believe in. Effective leaders speak in a way that aligns with shared values, principles, and aspirations. They highlight what matters most to their teams, their organizations, and the broader mission. This alignment makes their words resonate on a deeper, more personal level. Humor and humanity are subtle but powerful tools in a leader's speech. Leaders know when to lighten the mood or acknowledge human imperfection. A carefully placed smile, a relatable story, or a moment of humor can make a message more approachable. It builds connection and breaks down barriers. People are more receptive to leaders who are both competent and relatable, who can balance authority with approachability. Leaders communicate with foresight. They anticipate questions, objections, and concerns. They address them proactively, weaving answers into their message before they are even asked. This shows preparation, thoughtfulness, and respect for the audience's perspective. When a leader speaks in this way, people feel confident in their direction because they sense that the leader has thought ahead and considered multiple angles. Another key aspect is repetition with variation. Leaders understand that repetition reinforces memory, but they also know that repeating the exact same words can become monotonous. They rephrase, add examples, and vary their delivery to keep engagement high while reinforcing key points. This technique ensures that critical messages stick without becoming tiresome. Leaders also embrace storytelling as a bridge between data and meaning. Numbers, statistics, and reports are essential, but they can feel abstract. A story puts them in context, humanizes the information, and makes it actionable. For example, a leader may explain a strategy using a real-life case study or anecdote. This not only illustrates a principle, but also makes it relatable and compelling. Leaders are mindful of energy in speech. Energy is contagious. The way a leader delivers a message, through voice, passion, and pacing, can elevate the mood and motivation of the audience. Leaders understand that monotone or disengaged speech can flatten a message, while dynamic, energized delivery inspires action. They match their energy to the context, knowing when to be calm, reflective, or fiery. Leaders also provide direction while leaving room for creativity. They communicate objectives clearly but allow individuals to find their own path. Instead of micromanaging through words, they guide, suggest, and empower. Their speech is directive, not controlling. People feel ownership of their work and are more motivated when they understand the why, but have freedom in the how. Leaders reinforce accountability through language. They set clear expectations, outline responsibilities, and define measurable outcomes. But they do it in a way that motivates rather than intimidates. Accountability is framed as growth and progress, not punishment. Leaders make it clear that every action has purpose and every contribution matters. This type of communication builds commitment, reliability, and performance. Leaders also use inclusive language. They create a sense of belonging through words. They say we instead of I, our team instead of my team. This subtle shift fosters collaboration, trust, and shared ownership. Inclusive language communicates that everyone's contribution is valued and that success is collective. It's not just what is said, it's the sense of unity and purpose that the words convey. Leaders know that listening feeds speaking. They observe reactions, read body language, and adjust messages in real time. Communication is fluid and responsive, not static. Leaders pick up on cues, confusion, excitement, skepticism, and adapt their delivery to ensure understanding and engagement. This dynamic approach sets them apart from those who speak without awareness. Leaders also speak with credibility, rooted in action. Words alone are not enough. Leaders' speech is powerful because it is backed by integrity, consistency, and past performance. People trust leaders who demonstrate that their words align with actions. This alignment builds authority naturally, without force or coercion. When people know a leader speaks truthfully and reliably, the impact of their words multiplies. Leaders also recognize the rhythm of human attention. They vary sentence length, pause strategically, and use emphasis to guide focus. This prevents messages from being lost in monotony. Leaders structure their communication like music. There are crescendos, quiet moments, and repetition that reinforce the key themes. This rhythm keeps people engaged and ensures comprehension. Finally, leaders communicate hope. They acknowledge challenges but focus on solutions, possibilities, and growth. Their words convey belief in the potential of individuals and teams. Hope motivates action more than fear ever can. Leaders instill confidence that obstacles can be overcome, that goals are achievable, and that efforts matter. This ability to combine realism with optimism is what makes their communication transformational. Leaders talk differently because they understand the full spectrum of communication. They speak with clarity, confidence, empathy, and vision. They use stories, examples, and metaphors. They listen, observe, and adapt. They reinforce messages, inspire action, and cultivate trust. Every word, pause, and gesture is intentional. Every conversation is an opportunity to guide, influence, and elevate. The lessons here are simple but powerful. Think before you speak. Speak with purpose, listen with intent, and lead with integrity. Anyone can improve their communication by observing these patterns and practicing them consistently. Words are one of the most powerful tools a leader possesses. How they are used determines not just perception, but results, influence, and legacy. When you adopt these practices, you don't just talk, you lead. You create clarity where there is confusion, hope where there is uncertainty, and alignment where there is fragmentation. You inspire, guide, and elevate people through the simple act of thoughtful, intentional communication. This is how leaders speak. This is how leaders change outcomes. This is how leaders create impact. Leaders don't just speak. They craft experiences through words. Every conversation, every meeting, every interaction is an opportunity to shape thinking and inspire action. Think about the last time a leader's words moved you. Chances are, it wasn't just information. They communicated in a way that connected with your heart, your mind, and even your sense of possibility. That's the power of leadership communication. One of the most striking differences in how leaders talk is how they handle challenges. Most people panic, hedge, or over-explain when things go wrong. Leaders, however, speak with composure. They acknowledge the reality of the situation, but they focus on solutions and opportunity. Imagine a team facing a major project setback. A typical reaction might be to panic, blame, or apologize excessively. A leader, however, says something like, "This is a challenge, yes, but here's how we can overcome it together." Notice the difference. The leader is not ignoring the difficulty. They are reframing it as a possibility, giving the team focus, energy, and direction. Leaders also communicate with rhythm and intentionality. If you listen closely to great leaders, you'll notice the pauses, the rise and fall in tone, the emphasis on key words. They structure their sentences, so ideas land with impact. It's not about being theatrical. It's about being deliberate. A pause after a critical statement is like a drumbeat in music. It gives people time to absorb, reflect, and internalize the message. Leaders understand that timing and pacing are as important as the words themselves. Another essential aspect of leadership communication is the ability to speak in stories, not just statements. Leaders share experiences, anecdotes, and lessons. Consider a situation where a team is hesitant to try a new approach. A leader might share a story about a time they faced a similar risk, how they navigated it, and what the outcome was. This approach does more than convey information. It builds trust, models behavior, and inspires action. Stories humanize leaders, make abstract ideas tangible, and leave a lasting impression. Leaders also use language that is inclusive and empowering. They avoid hierarchical, authoritarian tones. Instead of "do this" or "you must," they say, "Let's try this together," or "Here's how we can approach this." Words like "we," "our," and "together" foster collaboration, ownership, and unity. People feel part of something bigger, not just following instructions. Inclusion in language cultivates engagement and loyalty. It signals respect and shared purpose. An often overlooked aspect of leader communication is emotional intelligence. Leaders read the room, sense the energy, and adjust their delivery accordingly. If tension is high, they speak calmly and reassuringly. If motivation is needed, they energize and inspire. Leaders also validate emotions. They acknowledge fear, frustration, or excitement, but they never let those emotions derail the direction or focus. This ability to balance emotion and purpose in speech is what separates leaders from ordinary communicators. Leaders also communicate vision with clarity and detail. It's not enough to say, "We're aiming high." They paint a picture, what success looks like, why it matters, and what each individual's role is. This makes abstract goals tangible. People understand not just the destination, but the journey and their part in it. Vision-driven communication provides direction, aligns efforts, and motivates sustained action. Adaptability is another hallmark of leadership speech. A leader will speak differently to a board of executives, a team of new hires, or a group of customers. They adjust tone, word choice, and examples to meet the audience where they are. This adaptability requires observation, empathy, and anticipation. Leaders know that effective communication is not about saying the same thing to everyone. It's about making the message resonate with each audience. Leaders also communicate with credibility and authority. Every statement is backed by evidence, experience, or thoughtful reasoning. Empty promises or unsubstantiated claims weaken trust. A leader who communicates with authority does so because they know their material, understand the context, and align word with action. People listen because they recognize that these are not just words. They are commitments, principles, and guidance rooted in expertise. Persuasion is subtle yet powerful in how leaders talk. Leaders don't coerce. They influence. They appeal to logic, values, emotion, and shared purpose. They present arguments in a way that allows others to come to agreement voluntarily. Effective persuasion in leadership is less about convincing and more about guiding. People feel inspired to act because they understand, believe, and feel ownership over the decision. Leaders also embrace the power of repetition and reinforcement. They repeat key ideas, not a nag, but to ensure clarity and retention. Strategic repetition helps embed priorities, align thinking, and reinforce culture. They vary the way they repeat, sometimes through stories, sometimes through examples, sometimes through direct statements. But the core message remains consistent. This ensures that ideas are remembered, internalized, and acted upon. Another key point is that leaders speak with authenticity. They don't try to be someone they are not. Their words reflect their true values, beliefs, and intentions. Authenticity creates trust. People can sense when words are genuine or forced. Leaders understand that their credibility is built not just on knowledge, but on alignment between speech, action, and character. Authentic speech inspires loyalty and respect. Leaders also communicate hope and possibility. Even in difficult circumstances, their words highlight potential, growth, and opportunity. They acknowledge obstacles, but they never dwell on them. Instead, they redirect focus toward solutions, action, and progress. Hope motivates more than fear ever can. A team guided by a leader who speaks with optimism will be resilient, creative, and proactive. Leaders communicate with simplicity. They know that complexity can overwhelm and paralyze. Even the most complicated ideas are distilled into clear, concise, and actionable language. Simplicity does not mean dumbing down. It means making ideas accessible and memorable. People follow leaders who can explain what matters in a way they understand. And remember, leaders also ask questions that provoke thought and engagement. They know that dialogue is more effective than monologue. Strategic questions encourage reflection, creativity, and problem-solving. Leaders ask questions not just to gather information, but to guide thinking, reveal assumptions, and empower their teams to arrive at solutions. This creates ownership, accountability, and innovation. Nonverbal communication is an extension of how leaders speak. Gesture, posture, facial expression, and eye contact all reinforce words. A leader who speaks confidently but slouches or avoids eye contact will lose impact. Leaders are aware of this integration. They align body language with words to maximize clarity, influence, and credibility. Every movement, every pause, every look supports the message. Leaders also model resilience through speech. When faced with setbacks, they communicate lessons, insights, and next steps. Their words convey that challenges are temporary and solvable. This modeling of resilience through language encourages teams to persevere, adapt, and innovate rather than succumb to frustration or fear. Finally, leaders speak with a sense of responsibility. They understand that words have consequences. They choose them thoughtfully, knowing that communication shapes perception, culture, and action. Leaders speak not just to convey information, but to guide, influence, and inspire. Their words carry weight, not because of title, but because of intention, clarity, and impact. By observing these patterns, clarity, confidence, empathy, storytelling, rhythm, credibility, simplicity, vision, hope, and presence, you can elevate your own communication. You can speak in a way that motivates, inspires, and leads. Leadership is not about talking more. It's about talking better, with purpose, precision, and impact. When you adopt these habits, you realize that communication is the most powerful leadership tool you have. Your words can clarify confusion, spark innovation, build trust, and drive action. Leadership begins with speech, not because you have authority, but because your words influence, guide, and shape the people and world around you. As we conclude, remember this. Leadership is not defined by a title, a position, or authority. Leadership is defined by your ability to influence, inspire, and guide through your words. Every conversation you have, every word you speak, is an opportunity to shape outcomes, build trust, and create impact. The way leaders talk is intentional, purposeful, and authentic. They speak with clarity, confidence, and vision. They listen with empathy, inspire through stories, and guide through action. They communicate hope in the face of challenges, simplicity in complexity, and possibility where others see obstacles. This is not just about speaking. It's about connecting, motivating, and leading people toward a greater purpose. Your words matter more than you realize. They can ignite passion, align efforts, and transform teams. They can heal, inspire, and create momentum. And the beautiful part is, anyone can learn to speak like a leader. By practicing clarity, listening deeply, choosing words with intention, and speaking with authenticity, you begin to lead, regardless of your role, title, or experience. So go forward and speak with purpose. Pause, reflect, and choose your words carefully. Tell stories that inspire. Ask questions that challenge and engage. Speak with conviction, but also with empathy, led through your communication, and you will find that your words become your most powerful tool for influence, impact, and change. Leadership starts with the courage to speak, the wisdom to listen, and the intention to guide. Every word is an opportunity. Every conversation is a chance to make a difference. Speak like a leader, and the world will listen.